behind you, always contemplating what to do in case happiness found you. Hey, come on, baby, follow me. I'm the pied piper. Follow me. I'm the pied piper, and I'll show you where it's at.
All right, we're going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming. So welcome to the Silicon Slopes Live. We're here with Ben Peterson, who's the CEO of Blue Raven Solar. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks for taking the time. Let's start with your background. Give us a quick story of how you ended up at Blue Raven and just go back down the timeline.
Well, the first thing I would say is I just want to thank all of you for coming today. I walked in and I saw a bamboo HR sign coming in, and I thought that certainly everyone who's here today thought they were going to go see the other Ben Peterson, the CEO of Bamboo HR. And so if you want to leave now because it's just me, that's totally fine. We have it's funny because on Glassdoor, employees will give reviews, and as reviews start to kind of come in about, the CEO of Blue Raven, the team was quick to remind me, Garrett, that I wasn't even the highest rated Ben Peterson CEO who worked in Orem, Utah. That was the other Ben Peterson. So, but I'm Ben Peterson of Blue Raven Solar. I never thought I would work. I never thought I'd be a CEO. I never thought I would work in renewable energy. If I'm being candid, I have felt like grade school and high school and college don't really prepare us for what happens the day after you graduate college and suddenly you're supposed to know what you want to do with your life. For me, that was a very difficult transition, suddenly faced with what am I going to do with my life? What is my career? Up until that point, life is sort of scripted. The game is you're supposed to learn, and then you just regurgitate the answers, you memorize stuff, and that you do that for a long time, and if you do it well, it leads to other things, and then suddenly I was thrust into, hey, what do you want to be, what do you want to do, and I had no idea how to do that. So my journey to Blue Raven was I took the only job I was offered out of college. I got one offer. I graduated from Stanford in 2008, financial crisis, I don't know how old you were, but I was graduating that summer. So firms would come and interview a bunch of kids at Stanford, and they would go through, and if they had like 8 people on the interview roster, I was the bottom of whoever they were interviewing. So it was no. I got the only job offer I got. I took the job interview just because I thought it'll be great experience, and ended up taking the job. It was with McMaster Car Supply Company. How many of you have heard of McMaster Car? I'm surprised. I told friends, and they just gave me the weirdest look. Like, you're doing what? You're going to go work at a screw factory? Turns out they don't manufacture anything. It's worse. They just distribute it. So it was just I wore steel toe boots and jeans. I was in a warehouse, and my job was to optimize how packages moved through a warehouse. And anyway, it was a great experience, but I learned that I wanted to be passionate about what I did, that really mattered to me. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but I wanted to find a connection between what I was working on and making an impact on the world. And so went to business school, wound up at McKinsey, because I thought that was a way to have impact. I could work with a bunch of different clients. I could see a bunch of different problems. And then I found out at McKinsey that what I really also liked was when I said something, I wanted it to happen, or at least be considered, and I felt like I was building PowerPoint decks. And so from there came and found Blue Raven. I actually didn't found Blue Raven. I'm not a founder at Blue Raven. So for those of you who think you need to be a founder, the kind of the mystique of a founder, I'm not the founder of Blue Raven. There were 2 brothers who had started Blue Raven Solar. They'd had about 4 to 6 months of early traction, and I ended up meeting them, and one thing led to another, which I'm happy to talk about. But that was my journey. It was contrary to McKinsey. McKinsey tells you that you need to have a framework for everything, and everybody at the firm, as they would know themselves by, would be very disappointed that there was no framework involved with me kind of charting my pathway through life. It's much more chaotic than that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the background, and it's probably funner being at Blue Raven than wearing steel-toed boots and worrying about packages.
Those were some good days, except when I had volunteered to take the 3 a.m. shift. Those were some dark days.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can empathize with blue-collar workers.
Exactly.
All right, so just give a quick rundown for those that might not be familiar with what is Blue Raven Solar.
Yeah, sure. So Blue Raven Solar is a originator and a fully integrated fulfillment company of residential solar. So we sell, we install, we service panels, mostly rooftop solar. We're in about 15 or 16 different states right now. In Utah, everyone seems to have a nephew or a sister or a brother-in-law who's somehow related or involved in the solar industry. That is not the case across the rest of the country. It's still very early innings. So solar is about 3% of homes have solar, Garrett, 3 out of 100. So very, very early. So our familiarity with solar just happens to be because Utah County is one of the direct sales capitals of the world, which happens to be a prominent sales channel for solar. But it's still very early. And so we've been in business for 6.5 years now. We're headquartered in Orem. We've moved a bunch of different times. We've moved our headquarters. We started out with a couple of employees, and now we're approaching 1,500 team members, kind of nationwide.
Yeah, that's exciting. And for those of us that might have like a hippie side, which I do, I really love renewable energy and solar, but it's not without perils, right? I remember when I was trying to get into the University Growth Fund, you had to do an analysis of a company. This was in 2008 as well, and it was a photovoltaic solar company that ended up going bust during the Great Recession. But talk a little bit about why solar is awesome and your guys' part in it.
Solar is awesome. You'll read this on the internet, so I don't know if it's true, but I think it's true. Enough sunlight hits the earth in an hour to power the global energy needs for a year. And so if you just think about that, it's pretty extraordinary. Our job is just to capture that energy. There are no moving parts in solar. It doesn't break down. It lasts for 25 plus years. And with this photovoltaic cell, obviously, we're converting sunlight into electricity. It has to go through an inverter. So it converts from direct current to alternating current so your home can use it. And I often tell new team members that come and join us, I say, we are changing the landscape of how we consume energy. If you think about utility companies, they've been doing it for 150 years. They've been largely burning things to meet our energy needs and then transmitting it over long distances with a bunch of loss. Today, if you look at California and Texas and elsewhere, there's massive reliability issues and a bunch of problems. Environmental impact, reliability problems. Solar is one of the many answers, I think, to that challenge. I don't think that the grid is bad. It's not bad at all. It's a terrific for national defense and for other reasons. We got to have a strong grid. But in terms of the proportion that is generated from the sun and a clean energy, we are at the beginning of a transformation. And so it's very fun to be part of that, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But I read a statistic the other day, 2.5 million electric vehicles were sold last year. By 2030, 31 million vehicles will be, new cars will be electric vehicles that are sold. It'll account for a third of all new cars purchased by 2030 will be electric. And you just think of the electrification of everything. Solar is the generation side of that entire change in how we live and how we consume.
Yeah, And really the only downside would be if the sun stops shining. But we have 8 minutes to know, right?
Yeah, we have 8 minutes to know, and what is it, 4.5 billion years to innovate before then.
Yeah. So good business model. Real quick, because again, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. This came from your website. Blue Raven Solar installed enough systems in June to offset 110 million kilowatt hours of electricity, which is equal to the CO2 emissions of 86 million pounds of coal, 14,000 homes electrified for 1 year, and 181,000 barrels of oil in just June.
Yeah.
So the numbers add up.
That's if you take the lifetime of what the systems will produce for 25 years, pull it back to today, and do the offset calculation. It's pretty staggering. Blue Raven, in our history, we've just, I think this month or next month, we will install our 20,000th customer. And so that is, we're just knocking on 500,000 cars taken off the road for a year in terms of impact, which is a big milestone for us.
That's amazing. You mentioned briefly when you were discussing some other things, conversations with employees. I saw on the website and some of your blogs that you interact and have a conversation with each employee. And you have a lot more than 3 now than when you started. How does that work, and what's the purpose behind that?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in our mission, and I'm a big believer in our values. I tell the new folks that show up, I say, when I first joined Blue Raven, so let me just take a step back. Blue Raven was a sales company when I joined. It was a full sales organization. The business model was sell solar and then have a fulfillment company go put it on the roof and just do that over and over. And I was attracted to the sales traction. I was attracted to the product and the impact, and I also knew that my skill set would complement what was already working well and what was not working well in the organization. The story of Blue Raven over the last 5-6 years has been to pull all of that engineering, all that design, all the fulfillment, all of the labor, everything, and just do it ourselves. Because I firmly believed that if you think about it, a home is someone's most expensive asset that they own, typically, your average person. We're asking them to put their second most expensive asset on their most expensive asset. So they care very, very much about what the economics are, how that experience is. Like they want that to go well. And so if we didn't control that experience and do it well, we were going to go out of business. So I talk about that, and I say my jobs were to not run out of money, don't run out of money, don't run out of money, and then figure out what our mission and our values were. Because if we didn't have the right mission and values, there's no way that we could accomplish what we needed to do to survive and thrive. So it took me, I thought I could just do this in like 2 weeks, like brainstorm and ask a few people, like, hey, what do you think our values should be? It took about a year to come up with what I felt like were representative values and a mission. And our mission is to make homeowners' lives better. And we do that by saving them money, by increasing their reliance on clean and abundant energy, and providing a world-class customer experience through a reliable sales process and high-quality installation. And then I ask people, I say, what is the difference between a mission and values? Or is that just fancy ways of really saying the same thing? And most people will say, well, I don't really know. And so we have a good conversation about that. A mission is why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And the values are how are you going to do that? And so our values, we have 3 values, Garrett. Our first value is develop a high-trust culture. Our second value is be efficient. And our third value is continuously improve. And each of those values has 4 accompanying statements where the rubber meets the road. Okay, well, how do we develop a high-trust culture? How should we be efficient? How should we continuously improve? And I'm such a believer in this that I made all of our installers across the country print out and put our values on the back of the vans. I made all the sales offices. You can just imagine like a sales office. Like they're not thinking values.
No.
They're thinking sales. They're thinking numbers. And I was like, I need a picture of our values put up by the end of the week in your office. or there's consequences. Like, learn our values, live our values. And it's interesting because, and I'll say two things. Somebody told me on the phone last week, we had some sales leaders come in to visit us. And one of them remarked to our VP of sales, he said, Blue Raven is different. I don't know how to put my finger on it. I've worked in other places. I've been in other solar companies. And there is something about it where when Blue Raven says they're going to do something, I know it's going to be done. And that's why I'm here. That's why this whole thing is working. That's our first. So for me, I was like, I got to drop the phone and just want to start crying. Like, we did it. Yeah. I meet with every new corporate employee. I batch them into groups of 12, no more than 12, because we have 12 values, 3 times 4, and I want each of them to read it and talk to me about it. And I put their names. I put their names on the whiteboard. Where do you work? What's your name? My name's Ben. Today we're going to learn our values and our mission. And I say I think these values are going to be powerful for you while you're at Blue Raven for as long as you're with us. But I would submit to you that these values, you might want to consider pulling them into your life. So we talk about them, and at the end, I make them close their eyes and say, okay, what's value 1A? What's value 1B? And they, as a group, we kind of recite them and commit them to memory. And I say, I'd love your feedback. If you think we're not living one of these values, don't wait to have been here for 2 years. Like, you guys are the new blood. Help us stay true to these values. I need your help. And so I think that has something to do with the fact that if you were to pull a random Blue Raven employee off the street, I think there's a higher likelihood that they really know what's going on. They know what we're all about.
Yeah. So what started out as like a 2-week project theoretically turned into a year, but it's paid off in spades in company culture, customer service, differentiator with competition perhaps.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, every time that values meeting makes its way on my calendar, I have this 5-second do I really need to do that again? It's kind of interesting. I've got other stuff to do. But I don't miss it. I show up, and at the end of it, I'm like, I just said largely the same thing for an hour, and I'm so glad I did that. So yeah, I think it's a big differentiator for us.
Yeah. You mentioned McKinsey as part of your background. What were some of the things that you learned or did not want to learn that impact how you run Blue Raven?
McKinsey. If I were talking about McKinsey 5 years ago, I think it'd be maybe a different feeling in the room. McKinsey is a great place. I'm profoundly grateful for my time there. I've learned a few things. When I went to McMaster-Carr, my friends and family were like, what are you doing with your life? How did you get lost? And then when I went to McKinsey, they were like, how are you so amazing? You got it all figured out. And everyone is wrong. None of those. So I guess for me, it's been don't listen to what other people think you should be doing with your life, your professional life. As long as you're running towards something, you're solving a big problem, and you have a lot of integrity and you're authentic about that decision. Because the Blue Raven for me is the combination of grit, grinding out cents per kilowatt, cents per watt, the discipline. I think one of the things that sets Blue Raven apart from other solar companies is our discipline. I could talk at length about that. That's probably the single largest differentiator is we are disciplined. I learned that from McMaster-Carr. That's a 100-plus-year-old business trying to find sense. And it was hard. And you went into meetings, and you were expected to know your numbers, and it was just great. McKinsey taught me how to think, how to structure a PowerPoint deck to persuade other people of a course of action. It taught me how to have difficult conversations and kind of refine. It was kind of like the postdoc to an MBA. When I came to Blue Raven, it's been the combination of both of those experiences that I've pulled in and tried to help the team learn from my experience at McMaster-Carr and learn from my experience at McKinsey. I also borrowed, to be perfectly candid too, there was I worked on a study where we rolled out a lean management, continuous improvement management system. And it's not McKinsey proprietary. This is GE's Jack Welch. This is sort of best practice. How do you manage? And we've adapted that to Blue Raven, and it's a set of 12 tools. We have huddles. We have an employee barometer. We do root cause problem solving. We have leadership practices. We do demand and capacity management. It's a whole set of hard skills, coaching and feedback that every manager is expected to do with their teams. And that's where I think the rubber meets the road for us, is we have a framework and a scaffolding to help leaders inside the organization be successful. A lot of that comes from getting some reps with that at other companies, at McKinsey.
Yeah, reps are important.
Yeah.
Very important. I'm always interested with CEOs. You guys are scaling, obviously, in revenue and employees and everything like that. How do you divide your time? Where do you focus on? It doesn't sound like you're chasing squirrels. It sounds like you're pretty calculated in what you do. But how do you decide day in and day out where to focus your time and effort?
Our second value is, our 2A, is deliver results that are worth more than they cost to deliver. We talk about that on a macro scale, Garrett. Like, what does that mean for a business to deliver a result? What does that mean for solar? We've got to compete with the grid. We've got to deliver a kilowatt hour that it costs less than Rocky Mountain Power, right? I mean, that's what it means to deliver a result. And then we talk about what does it mean for us personally to do it. And I share the experience, which is true for me. Every Friday, I don't know if the rest of you have a little end-of-week ritual, but I have an end-of-week ritual. About Friday afternoon, around 3 p.m., I look back at my week, and I ask myself, was I a tax on this business, or did I contribute more value than the company paid me? And some weeks the answer is, I think I was a tax. I don't know that I really got it done this week. And so what I do is I look at next week, and I block off time on my calendar to do the hard things, whatever that is, and I always know what it is. I typically do. I've typically been avoiding it, or, based on this week's performance, what do we got to go do next week? And I block off that time. So to answer your question, it's more about the discipline of a weekly ritual, deciding what that needs to be, than, hey, 32% of your time should be spent on marketing or something.
Yeah. And as a first-time CEO, what are some surprises that you thought, looking out? I think I know what the CEO does, but now that you've been in that chair, what are a few surprises that you did not see?
When I was a kid, I thought it would be cool to be a CEO, because then everybody would work to you and they would do what you say. And I found that that's not true at all. I work for everybody. My job is to say, how can I help? And then not just say that, but actually mean it and do it. Remove obstacles. So that's been a bit of a surprise. I am a first-time CEO, as you said, so I'm still figuring this out. I don't know. I still have to kind of sharpen the saw and figure it out every quarter. So I'm still learning what it means. I learn a lot from our team. Our leadership team teaches me and doesn't let me get away with anything. They're really tough on me. I'm thankful for that. Some of them are here today. And, I think the biggest surprise has been that it's more similar to the other leadership roles that I have had. It's just you happen to be the CEO. But when I was a frontline manager in my first job, it was exactly the same, Garrett. It was, okay, well, what's our objective? Who's on the team? What are the KPIs? What is success? What are the problems? How do we go achieve that? What do the next 3 months need to look like? It's the same. It's the same exact thing. There's just a little bit, the stakes are a little bit higher, but it's the same for any team, for any kind of leadership role.
Yeah, good answer. And so let's say the objective is to open in a new state. Give a quick rundown on how that works. How do you decide to do it? How do you roll it out? What are the processes?
So most solar is sold in Hawaii and California. Solar is 3% penetrated in the United States, but Hawaii's rate of penetration is like 9%, and Hawaii is like 25+%. So really, when you look at the United States, it's far less. Our strategy has been to, hit them where they ain't. So we focus on the flyover states. We focus on states that where we're the first company that the utility company has had to figure out interconnection with. So we're in Illinois, we're in Indiana, we're in Ohio. And I love that. I love that because we're the first, we're helping homeowners, your average homeowner, go solar because they're now talking to somebody from Blue Raven and they're not having to do it with a mom and pop shop that's going to go bankrupt or offer no service. I really believe that we have a responsibility now. When you start doing something well, we have a responsibility now to provide that to homeowners, help them make the switch to clean and renewable energy. So we focus on states where there's just not a lot of solar happening. And I think that's worked for us. So when we go to a new state, we have to do research on everything. The AHJ, which means the building, the authority having jurisdiction, the net metering policy, the demographics. We have to do all that research, and then we have to find leadership who's really excited and ready and able to go explore there. We have to spin up our digital campaigns, and we have to kind of have this coordinated approach to rolling out the market, as I'm sure you would in most businesses.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'll ask. So interaction with regulators or utilities, is that a problem in each state? Or are there states that are easier? Is it just a problem overall?
One of my goals, if I'm doing this in 20 years, one of my goals would be to lead out on a better conversation with utility companies. Right now, it's pretty combative. Some of them are more friendly to a residential solar company than others, and I give them credit for that. And we work with them, and we interconnect the right way. We pass inspections. We want to do this the right way. But I think there's a bigger conversation to be had in America about what it should really look like. And I don't think it needs to be zero sum. I think there's, with storage, with microgrids, which are ecosystems that can operate autonomously from the grid and then also push capacity into the grid, shifting demand using software. This is something that PG&E and this is win-win for society, for everybody. Why are we doing it in this way where we're just going customer by customer? That actually doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. So I think the conversation should and could be better. We just got to get there.
Yeah. And so there's a fair amount of competition in solar. You've mentioned your team. How do you guys view the competition? How do you address the competition? Is it always on your mind? Do you just put your head down and know you guys are doing a good job? How do you guys evaluate that?
When new people come and join Blue Raven, I say, what is our competition? Who's our competition? And it's a fun question. They're like, oh, well, Vivint or Sunrun, or I guess now it's the same company, I guess, or, it's sort of like, I'm like, no, that's not our competition. It's the grid. It's the way that energy is being delivered. And I believe that. I actually don't spend occasionally I'll look at a competitor proposal and say, are they making stuff up? Are they promising stuff that, but it's mostly for that. But I don't really think about the competition too much in that regard. I want to be able to provide the best possible product for the lowest possible price, deliver a great customer experience, so that switching to to solar as a homeowner, when you think about, well, I could just continue with this monopoly, and I mean, who loves their utility? You get a utility bill in the mail. That's not warm fuzzies, and they're not thinking about you as a customer whose experience really matters. It's just electrons, right? It's just sort of like lost. And so we try to deliver a very different experience than an alternative. That's what I spend my time thinking about.
Okay. And a little bit more on leadership. You were voted as one of the best CEOs with that Glassdoor poll. And there's a lot of CEOs out there, so congratulations to that. But what do you think enabled that many votes in your favor? Ultimately, it might be tough for you to answer because you'll have to maybe brag a little bit, but there's obviously something there for you to win that.
I'm not sure. That's Glassdoor's Top 100 CEO Award. I think that was for 2020. I think a lot of that, we were ranked on Glassdoor for a different award that I think is really related to that, frankly. Because as a CEO, I don't think it's really about me. It's not really about Ben. It's about Blue Raven and the mission. And so because we are fulfilling our mission, then, our CEO, I'm sure he's doing a great job. I think that's more how it goes. We were ranked the 20th best place to work on Glassdoor for all large companies in 2020, largely due, when I looked at the responses, due to our response during the pandemic. I was surprised to see companies like Nike and Southwest and Apple, they're on the list, but little old Blue Raven Solar was higher on the list. And I was like, I've got to pinch myself. And I think it's because, one, we were tremendously benefited by being declared an essential business during the pandemic. That really helped us. But two, I think we struck the right balance between protecting jobs, keeping people employed, still being about the work, and then also understanding that people were reacting really differently to this pandemic. And we needed to have a very flexible policy to allow people to work from home or miss time or support them if they were going through, so just that balance during that. And we really came out of that year. I mean, I remember March 11th, I remember vividly, I remember sales being down 50%. I remember thinking, well, this was a great experience, fun experiment, Blue Raven. I've learned a lot. And we really, fast forward 6 months, and the team rallied, and we came out of that stronger than ever. It was just a miracle. So I think that's largely contributing to what you're seeing.
Awesome. I've got one or two more questions, and we'll open it up to the audience. So what are some of your just general predictions for solar? Obviously, you guys will play a part in that, but the next 10, 15 years, you're sitting in the catbird seat. You know it's coming down the chute. How's it going to look? Our kids will be driving through a neighborhood, or they won't, because they'll be in an autonomous vehicle. And they'll be looking out the back seat, and they'll look and they'll say, oh, that's weird. That home doesn't have solar on the roof. That's bizarre. That's what it'll be like. And then the car will pull up and it'll plug in. And the car will be the battery. So software will push load, and it will use the battery of the car, and there will be a battery in the home. And it's going to dramatically change how the home operates. There'll be the thermostat, the HVAC, the windows, the efficiency of the home. It's all going to be interconnected through a platform. Consumers are going to be able to make choices about how and what they consume, where they push load, how they help their neighbor out. There'll be a platform. There'll be an exchange rate for electricity, and it's going to be this giant electrification ecosystem that looks dramatically different, is more environmentally friendly, is less expensive. I read a study that to charge a vehicle, an average kind of Hyundai equivalent vehicle, is like $400 a year versus like $1,500 for a gas-powered vehicle. So it truly is, the economics are beginning to really be there, and I think we're just seeing that. We're seeing that transition right now. So I like that future, and I hope you're right. That sounds good, because people will be breathing easier. Polar bears will be secure.
If you ever come to our office, the Wi-Fi password is polar bear. I'm not kidding you.
That's good.
6 years and going, that's our Wi-Fi password.
Somebody's got to look out for them.
Yeah, that's right.
They're really majestic. Okay, last question, then we're opening it up. In your downtime, or when you're mountain biking, whatever it is, and you're having a pensive moment, what gets you the most excited for the next year? What new products, new team? What gets you jazzed?
Yeah, it's a lot of the little first things, like new products that are being rolled out, new sales channels, new states, or splitting offices. All that tactical stuff is like, oh yeah, this is exciting. But that's not really where I rest when I think about that question. I think about the faces of the people on my team. I think about how much work they put into this place. And I think about delivering on my promises to them. I've made a lot of promises. You know, having to be an entrepreneur, you have to say there is a thing down the railroad tracks before it's really there, and then you have to make good on that. So I think about my ability to deliver on promises to a bunch of people, and really wanting to be able to do that, and feeling like we're going to be able to do that. And so that's what makes me. That's what I'm all about, is the team.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, don't be shy. It always takes a second for the first one, but what questions do you have for Ben? We've got a microphone in the back. Right here, Emma. Oh, we'll get you next time.
I loved your vision of the future. When we're not talking about new construction builds and you're adding solar in, how do you consider kind of the order of operation for a homeowner when they're thinking about solar, and what should they be thinking? Is solar something that they add on first? Do they work with insulation, with the HVAC, windows? Kind of how does it work to get the best return on investment, and how do you work with kind of complementary, I guess, industries to make sure that ultimately the consumer is getting the very best return on their investment and the best system for their house, for their situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Today, it's a bit kludgy. It's a very immature industry in that regard. What I think you're going to see is convergence onto a few winner-take-most platforms, where the platforms are able to offer all the product adjacencies that you as a consumer are looking for. So radiant barrier, windows, HVAC, thermostat, batteries, EV charger, solar. I mean, this is the guts of the home now for how you consume energy. And what you find today is everyone is kind of offering their one product. And no one really has cracked the nut on offering them all in kind of a no-brainer way. I happen to believe that solar is that, forgive the analogy, like Trojan horse, kind of that halo product, where it's like, oh, let me get solar. So in terms of order of operations, get solar, not just because I'm with Blue Raven today, every day. But I think that is where you're going to see the most savings. The economics, I mean, one of the innovations in the industry has been financing. Financing has driven this industry in at least as dramatic ways as the reduction in hard costs have over the years. The ability to get approved, no money down, and finance a loan for a monthly payment that's less than you're paying your utility provider, it's kind of a no-brainer. So don't wait for that convergence to happen. You'll have to kind of pick off best in class. But that is something that I mean, speaking of what I get excited about, in 5 years, my vision would be, let's let Blue Raven be that origination and fulfillment engine, building on our reputation. We're the most reviewed solar company in the nation right now, we're not the largest, but if you look across the internet, we have the most reviews. And it's because we do a great job. And so I want to bring that experience and pull in kind of the no-brainer product adjacencies and begin to be that platform with some partnerships and start to really address what you're describing as a homeowner.
Great question. Right here.
Thank you. So I had a follow-up question to your mission and values story. You talked about trying to convince these salespeople to put the values up on the board. Obviously, creating a culture in a company requires buy-in from those that are already there or from newcomers. How did you go about making it seem like this was a process? Because it does sound like you started kind of from the top down doing this process. How did you get the buy-in from everyone without always talking about consequences?
You may not like this answer. I'm going to be direct. This is what I believe, what I've experienced. But you have to let people off the bus. They have to go, who are not going to have a high trust culture. And that's really hard, especially when they're high performers and especially when they're in sales, because sales is the top end of the funnel. It kind of wags the rest of the dog. So there were some difficult, kind of high stakes decisions for me over the years. where I had to say, okay, if we have to take a couple of steps back here, we will do it. But we are going to be a company where we're transparent and honest and we do the right thing. What you find happens when that decision is made, everybody knows. Everyone's watching. So they know that, wow, okay, different team, interesting. And so over time, as the months go on and the years go on, we have wound up with a dramatically different organization over time. It's taken us 6 years. But today it is different because of those really difficult choices. It's far less about what I and others say, and it's much more about the human capital decisions, among other behavior. But that's, I think, the most important decision or behavior that people see.
Awesome. One more question. We have time for one more. Going once, right there.
Oh boy.
He's cringing right now.
Get him.
I think it might be interesting to this group, Ben, to talk about, you passed out a book called The Go-Getter to everyone, and I think that had an influence on your culture. Could you tell the story of The Go-Getter and what were the takeaways there and why you did that?
Yeah, so my dad is here today, which is great. You want me to cringe, Dad? I'll have you have a cringe moment. No, I'm just kidding. My dad used to talk about the go-getter. I actually tell this to all of our new employees. I say, hey, my dad, it's our last value is be a go-getter. And I say to them, I say, my dad used to talk about getting the blue vase, which is a big part of the story. But I say, he used to describe it for me as a kid as I was not getting the blue vase award. The Blue Vase Award is given to a man looking for a job, and he goes the extra mile. He's a go-getter. He stops a train. He looks through the phone book. Nothing is going to get in his way. And I've adopted that as a core part of my personality. I just believe that I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep, whatever it takes, I'm just going to keep doing it. Maybe it's why I like cycling. I'm going to suffer and get to the top, whatever it takes. So anyway, long story short, I hand that book, and I've handed a copy of that book out to every new corporate employee for the last 6 years, and I tell them to read it and come back to me and tell me what they learned. And then that begins a dialogue, and it's a fun way for me to connect with every new employee. I think for some it's more impactful than others, but for some I think it's made a big difference. It's kind of opened their eyes. It's a fun book. You should get it. It's 45 pages long. It was written in 1921, and a friend knew that I loved this book so much, he just sent me an original copy of it. So I've got an original copy from 1921 that I pull out, and I'm a big fan of the book.
Very cool. All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.